Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Good morning, I'm Karl Fitzpatrick and welcome to Business Matters. Well, tomorrow marks International Women's Day 2020 and the theme for this year's celebrations being An Equal World is an Enabled World. And in honour of this, on today's Business Matters, we will be featuring some of Ireland's female leaders. But before you meet my first guest this morning, I would like to introduce you to the United Nations Generation Equality Campaign, which aims to accelerate gender equality actions.
What defines a generation?
Climate justice! Right now!
Is it just about the year you were born? Or is there something more? We may have lived through different decades, different circumstances, different countries, but we all share in the global, everyday push for our rights, for justice, for a world that is equal. Perhaps what defines our generation isn't our age or our background, but the line in the sand that we have drawn. We take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
and economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us wage a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us.
Well, that was a powerful introduction to the United Nations Generation Equality Campaign. The campaign has mobilised governments and civil society to take bold action and keep the promises of the visionary agenda for gender equality. Their work continues. Now, let's get down to business. My first guest this morning is Dr Amelia Kelly from Soapbox Labs. Amelia, perhaps you could start the interview by providing us with an insight into Soapbox Labs.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be on the show. Well, Soapbox Labs is a deep tech speech recognition company that focuses primarily on speech technologies for child speech. Our CEO, our founder and CEO, Patricia Scanlon, came up with the idea in about 2013. Her young daughter at the time was learning how to read, and she noticed that there was an opportunity here for using speech recognition in literacy applications for kids. So after a bit of tinkering around, she realised that the speech recognition offerings that were available at the time in 2013 were totally inadequate for child speech. So that started the investigation into why child speech is different from adult speech, for example, and why you'd need particularly special speech recognition algorithms and technology to deal with it. From there, the company developed. I joined in 2015 as one of the first employees, and the company has grown in leaps and bounds from then over the last 5-6 years.
And would it be true to say that your clients would be preschool settings and also primary schools?
Yeah, the age groups we focus on are children from about the ages of 3 through 12. At around 12, children are grown up enough so that their voices more resemble adult speech, and the speech recognition that's already available is more able to handle it. But if you're looking at kids who are 3 years old, they're so physically different from adults. They have shorter and thinner vocal cords. They don't enunciate the same way as adults do. And behaviourally, they're very different. So we find that in these age groups as well, children are beginning to learn to read, and there's a lot of literacy applications. All of the clients that we work with would be mainly, for example, in the educational space. So when children are learning to read, it's very difficult for a teacher to find the time to sit down with each child individually and spend like the required 10 minutes of reading time with them. If we could use speech technology to facilitate a situation where the children could practice on their own and the teachers could get a view of their progress because it's being assessed by speech technology, that's a really good application of our technology.
So what are the core practical benefits which speech recognition products can deliver for children?
First of all, let's start with the global literacy crisis. From, let's say, identifying the need for early intervention with children reading, augmenting this kind of one-on-one support that a helpful teacher would generally give through a child's literacy journey. The voice tech can enable these kind of situations and they can really help it along. Let's say English language learning. There's so many children all over the world now learning English. There are platforms and apps available that, like one of our clients is Lingumi. They have an English language learning platform. And this existed long before we partnered with them, where the child would read something aloud. It would encourage the children to read aloud in English. But when they started the partnership with Soapbox Labs, they were able to plug in our voice technology, which then was able to give the child feedback as to whether they were reading and speaking correctly in English. And this power charged their platform, and it actually went viral in Taiwan. It's really popular there now. So these are just examples of how voice tech can be used for educational purpose.
Excellent. Now, I'd be interested if you could provide us with an insight into how the technology works.
Absolutely. So this is my real area. I actually have a background in speech technology myself. I have a PhD and I've got experience in Silicon Valley and in IBM Watson. I've worked as the Director of Speech Technology for Soapbox Labs since 2015, and I have been responsible for coming up with the technological strategy of how we build the technology. So we use deep neural nets, we use deep learning, we use cloud-based technologies to build using vast amounts of diverse children's speech data, models that allow us to recognize the individual speech sounds that the children say when they're speaking. There's also a lot of technology there that allows us to determine whether or not a child or an adult is speaking, or to identify different non-speech noises that might be going around in the background, like radios or dogs barking, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of deep tech going on there. Yeah, it's very interesting. And further, something that's also very interesting is that now we're looking beyond the cloud and looking to get this level of technology onto microchips so that we can enable, for example, smart toys and things like that, where the technology isn't actually connected to the internet, which is great for privacy and data privacy for children's voices especially.
And in terms of scale, what level of success has the company achieved to date?
Soapbox Labs has been very, very successful to date in getting funding. As most of our funding comes from two sources. We have some private investors who've been very supportive of Soapbox Labs over the years. We just closed a funding round with them recently. We also have availed of European grants. So we're coming to the end of a H2020 SME Instrument Phase 2 grant that went on for 2 years, during which time we created a multilingual speech recognition platform. And most recently, we've been the recipient of a funding round from the Disruptive Technology Innovation Fund, DTIF, in conjunction with Experian NUI Galway, which will set us up nicely for the next couple of years and allow us to do some very interesting research.
And just this week, Soapbox also announced a new classroom reading assessment product. What can you tell us about this?
The product that we launched, our first product to be launched this year, is Soapbox Fluency. In the US in particular, at different stages of reading, the children are assessed by their teachers and at a statewide level in how fluently they can read a passage of text. Generally, the child will be given a passage of text and the number of errors they make, or I guess the number of correct words that they read during that minute is used as a metric of how fluently they can read. The idea is the more fluently you can read, the less time you actually take to process. So it's a good indication of where the child is on their literacy journey. And the Soapbox Labs Fluency metric would use speech recognition to decide whether or not the child has correctly pronounced a word and feed back to the teacher that metric. So it will enable children to practice their fluent reading and the teacher to look at the progress of the child either immediately or over time, and offer help early and individually for each child.
Looking at future growth, where will the opportunities for Soapbox Labs come from, Amelia?
Well, I think the next decade in speech is going to be absolutely giant. In the last couple of years, voice tech has really taken over. I think there's 3.25 billion voice assistants in people's homes globally now. And a couple of years ago, they didn't even exist. I think the voice tech market is now valued at $1 trillion. So I think that kid tech is also a big thing that's coming up now. 40% of all new internet users every year are actually children. And when you think about all the technology that we enjoy as adults, a lot of the time when it comes to voice-enabled things, children don't have that same enjoyment because the voice-enabled things don't work for them, like the TVs and the Alexas and all that kind of thing. So it's very important that we build technology for it. So I really see that we're on the nexus of these two emerging innovation trends, voice tech and kid tech. And I think speech tech will play a leading role in both.
That's fascinating. Now, of course, tomorrow is International Women's Day. What does this day mean to you?
I think it's a very important day, especially as a woman who's worked in technology and in science. It's just a recognition that we can all sit down and think about what it means for women to be at the cutting edge of technology, and in every other walk of life as well. I mean, historically, women haven't had the best luck, and I think that's changing, and hopefully it's changing. I think people are a lot more accepting and cognizant of the importance of including women in conversations in how they spec out or design their company or their time off, or all these different things. I think that International Women's Day just gives people an opportunity to think about that.
And as you say, tech is a very male-dominated space. But how do we go about encouraging more women to get involved in senior roles within tech?
I think the first thing that you can do if you are a CEO or you are an investor is believe in women and be aware of any kind of biases that you might have yourself when you're interviewing women, when you're considering giving funding to female-led projects. If you look at some of the studies done, it's just kind of depressing sometimes, the biases that have been seen to come out in these kind of things. But I think that I've been very lucky in my career so far. Throughout my career, I have had PhD advisors and mentors. I've had bosses who have all been female and really, really amazing women, and really looked up to them and been really lucky to have been advised by them. I suppose my message to women who be in the field like me is to make sure you realise that you should get your voice out there and help people who are coming up in their career as well.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Dr Amelia Kelly from Soapbox Labs, and I would like to thank Amelia for joining us on this morning's programme, and we wish Soapbox Labs every success in the future.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
South